If you can close both doors, you can, please.
We're ready. We're live,
The
actually.
kitchen door too. Okay, sorry.
It's okay. We're live.
Oh,
All right.
no.
Well, hi everyone. Welcome to the show. Let's see here when we organize this. All right, and I have a dog here. She wanted to be up on the couch with me today, so she's licking my hand. But hi everybody. Hello. Good evening. Welcome. You're watching Stand Up Fight Back, where we discuss strategy and analysis for the progressive movement. I'm Margot Paez, your co-host. I'm a scientist, engineer, and occasional journalist. And over here is Carlos Marroquin. He is an amazing grassroots organizer and also co-host on this show. We also have a special guest with us, Antonieta Villamil. She is our poet in resident, and we are celebrating May Day today, and I think we're going to hear some phenomenal poetry around the subject of May Day. So, Carlos, hello. How are you? How was your May Day? Or how has your May Day been?
Well, good evening, everybody, wherever you may be watching us from. Uh, yes, today we celebrate the International Day of Workers. So we are giving and dedicating this broadcast to all the workers out there. It's been a very busy day for me. I have been working all day, and traditionally I participate in some of the marches here in Los Angeles, and I helped organize some of the marches the past few years. But this year I have been busy at work, and you know, meetings and what have you. But very, very satisfied with what we are seeing right now. The movement, the labor movement, is growing. There's so much excitement. There's a lot that we're going to talk today about the workers and the fight for justice and for better benefits, for pay, et cetera, et cetera. So greetings to everybody. We have you in mind today, all of the workers, regardless what your work consists of, whether you work inside, outside, whether you work for somebody, or perhaps you're even an employer. Your heart is with the workers, and you treat the workers right. So we celebrate workers today everywhere. Women, especially women, the kind of work that many of you do is recognizable, and also we understand that you carry a big load. So greetings everybody from here, from sunny Southern California. Uh, Welcome everybody.
Awesome. And Antonieta, thank you for joining us. Um, Carlos, shall we start with some poetry?
Thank you for inviting me.
All right.
Our guest is Antonieta. She's someone that has been on our show before. So it's someone that everybody knows. She's here in Southern California, a beautiful woman, a woman of courage. She's worked so much on the ground. She worked so much in different organizations. So we are very pleased to have her with us. She's native from Colombia. So welcome, Antonieta.
Thank you so much, Carlos and Margot. Thank you to the Inside Out News. And in the spirit of celebration of the workers, especially coming from Colombia, where more than 45% of the population is an independent worker, and where we, on the past April 28, had a national strike commemoration 1 year ago of the national strike in Colombia, which the government tried to, in the middle of a pandemic, raise the taxes on food and the poorest sectors of working people in Colombia. And the people had no other option but to take to the streets to protest these new taxes. And the rich were actually getting a break All of this in the midst of a pandemic, and the response of the government was brutal. They sent the military police. Basically, they killed and disappeared more than 100 people, and some of the police raped women. And all of this was known to the world because in some of the cases, the kids, the adolescents protesting, and the people were um, filming in their cellulars what was happening to them. Um, so that I come from that celebration a couple of days ago. And today, of course, May 1st, celebration for workers. So I have a poem. I have several poems, but I want to deliver this one because it talks about the farm workers and um, the people that are essential workers. The title is Migration Fields. To the migrant workers of the world, to always remember Cesar Chavez. Let us fields forever, cultivamos lechuga para siempre. Fields of tomato without end. Labramos tomate por siempre. Desde siempre sembramos los campos de fresa. To the children of the migrant workers of the world and las madres en la frontera. I am the child from La Frontera at the border. I am the child. I am the wanderer slicing from mud the shape of my limbs, emerging from the red river of old countries. I grasp weird horizons, the sky an innocent sapphire wetness at dusk and transparent absence at dawn. I think I arrived, but not quite. Where are my papito? Where is my mamita? I have to twist the rags of my face tighter. I am the child from La Frontera. I have to endure days sharpened from knives of hunger, knives of fear. I have to cross the river, the wall, almost, until icy flakes whistle in my eyes. I hope humanity is near, and with my little hands turned to ash, I extend arms asking you, please hold me, please. Do not leave me here with this umbrella of granite, rain falling inside. Let us fields forever, cultivamos lechuga para siempre. Fields of tomato without the end. Labramos tomate por siempre. Desde siempre sembramos los campos de fresa. Forever strawberry field.
Amazing. Bravo.
Thank you.
That was really lovely, Antonietta.
What inspired you to write this particular poem? What's behind it?
the situation of the children in La Frontera and the fact that many of these children are the sons and daughters of migrant workers that come here by temporadas, by the season, to pick the campos, to pick las cosechas. Um, and I want to almost apologize for my switch code because the words in Spanish, they jumped on me. But the harvest, and so we have a better time where we realize how essential these workers are to the whole chain. It's like realizing how essential are the bees, the insects, how essential is the tree, how essential are the flowers. So are the children. And the health of these workers, the happiness and the good conditions of work of these people will only reach all the sectors of our society because they are the ones making sure these these nutrients and this food, giving life food like vegetables and fruits, reach our tables. So, what great way to celebrate and to realize uh, uh, in all the sectors that work to make sure that the essential workers have a dignified life, and uh, it's a problem that we need to approach from the grassroots, and a way to make you think about it. I find that it's poetry. I have friends that go to La Frontera uh, to help these children at schools, give them workshops, and also bring them food, clothing, shoes, blankets. There's a great need in our borders to help. So I want to celebrate that way.
Got it. So beautiful. And as you know, everybody, today we celebrate the International Day of Workers.
Yes.
Here in California, we welcome we welcome the immigrants, we welcome the migrants that have fought so hard to get here, escaping from violence, escaping from climate change, escaping for the worst conditions that you can imagine, especially at work where many of them are taking advantage of by corporations that pay them little to nothing, for a day's work. Many of them earning as much as $2 a day, some even less than that. So the conditions, the people are fleeing from many places throughout the world and migrating to other countries is a condition, that has been created by the greed of corporations. Corporations are raking in billions of dollars in profits, and yet they give very little and they think very little of the workers, and they try to take advantage in many ways, to give them less. And this is why we also celebrate the labor movement, the unions, because they have been at the forefront in fighting for the workers, for better wages, for healthy and safe working conditions. Many of the corporations, they cut corners at every level possible so that they can that you know so that they can, save more money, put more money in their pockets, even at the cost of a very unsafe working conditions for their workers. So workers are really not, in front of their minds, and in, when it comes to wages, when it comes to profit, they leave the workers behind. very little for the workers. So we want to keep that in mind because, again, as we celebrate today's the dates of the International Day of Workers, let's remember that there's a lot of people out there, a lot of workers that are still working in very poor, unsafe conditions, and they get paid very little money as well. Margaret?
Yes, thank you, Carlos. Yes, and I think it's also important to remember the origins of this particular day, this celebration of workers and the worker struggle. May 1st, it goes back to the late 1800s when anarchists and socialists were fighting for the 8-hour workday. Before, at that time, labor was forced to work up to, I think, 16-hour days. People had lifespans going into their early 20s in some of these occupations. And there was incredible unemployment because of automation that had happened in the factories with new machines. And so you could produce more with less people at that time. And so it actually created a lot of unemployment, and a lot of people who were not the bosses, who were not the capitalists, were suffering. So, and then not only that, people lived in terrible conditions and in squalor, and 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 it was a very difficult lifestyle to live as a worker. So the 8-hour workday was something that labor fought for during that time, and there was a big, massive general strike that happened to actually make that possible. So labor, the reason why we have an 8-hour workday today is because of the struggles of the labor movement at the end of the 19th century. And without the demands of the labor movement, we wouldn't have we wouldn't have even an 8-hour workday, right? And I mean, labor had many gains, I think, over the early 20th century, but a lot of that has been incomplete and not spread evenly across all sectors of the workforce. As Carlos, you mentioned, there are still problems for workers that are put their lives in danger every day to produce products for the market, to enrich CEOs. Amazon is a prime example of how labor is forced to break its back just to move packages around the country so that we can get them at our doorstep with incredible ease. And there's no there's little recognition for labor. That wealth that is made, that Amazon makes, doesn't go to the people who work in the factories, who organize the shipments, right? They don't. But and then the CEOs are still making billions of dollars, and the richest people in the world are Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, amongst a few others, and their wealth is completely built on the back of their workers. But at the same time, there have been incredible wins recently. We're seeing them at Starbucks workers, and we're seeing that with Amazon workers. And I think right now is a moment of celebration for the workers movement, for the labor movement. These small wins, I think, are very significant. They're the beginning of something bigger, I hope. And I think that the more pressure that the working class feels, and the greater the dysfunction is in our society, the more people are going to feel that they have only one option, which is to take control of their lives and to take action and to apply direct action so that they can benefit somehow from this very unequal system. So a wonderful shout out to all the workers, to everybody who's fighting uh, in that movement. Thank you so much. And this is a very difficult struggle, but we have solidarity, and international solidarity especially is very important.
Yes. Antonieta, you had another poem that you wanted to share with us.
Yes, I actually have two, and they are in a very particular. Well, actually, I have three more poems that touch on different aspects of work. Um, I want to share this one. The title is "The Oil Road," and the reason I chose this poem is because it speaks at a moment in which we must turn the machine of the world, of the activity, the industrial activity, into green energies and energies that can help us turn the wheel on the climate change. And oil is so important to understand, and I think that the understanding of this will help us, help the investors to divest, help all sectors to understand that we must move toward that. So, well, I don't intend to explain the poem, but I wanted to touch on the oil because it's such a big workforce. It moves our world as we know it. So, how to make that transition and leave the oil at the base where it's more essential and away from polluting, bringing us to extinction. If we remember that oil comes from dinosaurs, so they're meant for extinction. Okay, the oil road. The oil road, let down roll the lifeless road. And Sherazad told me, looking into the future, don't open that box. It contains the tales of war to control the black gold, the air water gold, the green gold to control the green energy gold. Please, for now, do not open that box. Let me nurture the child I see in your eyes. Let it be the only reason to be a warrior, to stop the fire rain of your tears. The oil road, the comfort road, the empty road. What does it matter, this street, the faraway boulevard in another country, or historic Route 66? We smear the oil of our gaze, giving streets a dead name. We colored the road oil red, letting us speak from comfort windows. The oil road knows our destination, the wide network of its labyrinths, connecting our steps to a depleting place. The oil road, the toxic road, con dreamland road. What does it matter, your vehicle or my car? Our furnished caskets flying down lanes and moonlit walk sides where children inhale gasoline, or how the terrain of a country lets you drive adrift from winter's heat to a land pasted onto the silence of smelting rocks under summer knife rains. It matters that we belong to a tribe of workers that migrates, the tribe that roams the earth, the universe, all the way to the core of change. The oil road, a dirty load, blind alley road.
Amazing.
And well, I wanted to add to that that the oil industry and the car industry has been for the last 80 years putting insane amounts of money to quench, to hide the technology of solar panels. Solar panels are not a new technology. They're like a 100-year-old technology. So that should make us think, you know.
Yeah. Well, yes,
But
the oil industry. Go ahead, Carlos.
yeah, you know what is funny about this is that a lot of corporations spend millions of dollars fighting against unions, fighting against, workers, millions of dollars. But then when they ask for a raise, a dollar raise, they say they have no money. But they have money to fight them, millions of dollars. They put out these huge campaigns against the unions, against workers, and that money can actually be used for the very things that they're asking for, just fair wages. Just doesn't make sense, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make sense at all. It's not common sense.
Well, I mean, I think it's cheaper for them to put that money into advertisement than to provide services for their workers like healthcare and reasonable time off, right? I think that's why they do it. But of course they have the money, right? But it's the profit goes up to the top, not to the bottom.
Exactly. So what we are going to be seeing, especially right now, is unions rising up because we are seeing. I mean, there has been an awakening by workers everywhere. That's what the pandemic did. It created an awakening of workers. People realize that, look, I have been working 2 and 3 jobs and I got nowhere. I have nothing. So this is one of the reasons why a lot of the workers are not going back to their old jobs, is because they realize how left behind they have been, how much corporations and their employers have been taking advantage of them. So that's changing. And many of them are now working to organize their workplaces. They are inviting unions to come in. So this is good, and we're going to see even more of that, especially when, employers make every single excuse not to give raises. And what is sad about it is that a lot of the politicians that have promised that they would stand up for workers, they go right along with, corporations, and they deny, workers, fair wages by the policies that they push for. Look, for example, one of the things that, they've been fighting literally for years is just to raise up the minimum wage. And there's different states that have pushed for implementation of raising the minimum wage, and it has failed. When it comes for votes, they have denied the workers. That has to change. Do you have another poem with us for us today, Antonieta?
It will be one more, or I have a space for two more.
We have two more is fine, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna be sharing
Okay.
thoughts as you speak.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna be able, because there's so much that we can say regarding workers. You think
Yes,
about the hard
I
labor that
have two. Mm-hmm.
the women that have responsibilities at home, yet they have to go to work because there's not enough food to be put on the table. Think of
Mm-hmm.
seniors that now have to work longer years, longer careers, because Everything, the cost of living has risen up by so much that it's hard to retire. Think about the single mom, the single fathers, that are trying to put their kids through college, but education is so high. Think about people that don't have a car to get to work. Think about the people that have to rise up, 3 or 4 hours early so they can walk to work because they don't have enough money to pay for a bus fare. There are people like that, folks.
Yes, I have one that goes back in history, and it's a woman talking. I'm going to read the introduction to the poem. It's an anecdote. It's a historic anecdote. In the past, the princess Malitzin or Malinche was sold as a slave and delivered as proof of submission to the conqueror Hernán Cortés. At present, and heading to the United States, a Latin American woman puts on the shoes of the Malinche to talk about how Mother Earth is usurped and sold to the highest bidder. America's Malinches trade. And here it talks about trade and the difference between the concept of trade and tequio, trueque and tequio in Spanish, which was a concept considered in our tribes, in our indigenous tribes. The tequio puts the emphasis on the human capital and is the exchange of services what is most important. And in tequio, your word has the weight of the value and your service. And that's the way they used to deal. And then the trueque is the exchange of things. So in the confederate, our tribes were organized in a confederate way and in a cooperative way in this spirit, but tequio was first. The conquerors saw that, and the administration of these tribes, how resilient and how efficient they moved to the seasons and the surrounding. So they took the trade aspect, but left the tequio, and tequio became a word lost in translation. So I want to make the emphasis. America's Malinches take you to trade. I trade the eyes of your New Deal moon for a spark of my tropic in your groin. I swap the wink of my comrade eye for the neat impatience with which you entice me. I exchange the sizzling salsa of my hips, the jazz of my hot word in your ear, a thick fragrant coffee at dawn for nothing, not even thanks. I trade the piece of a breakfast with tortilla or corn cakes and milk chocolate for the north of your loneliness that drips fortified cereal for hunger. I swap the art wealth of my cuisine for your cancerous soda and your mad cow burger with emaciated white bread. I give you my lover heart, the unquestioned pleasure of 1,001 nights, a Kama Sutra in Spanglish, and the adoration of how many women you won for an iota of peace. I exchange the horror of the disappear and those who dig in the mines their own grave for the unconditional diamond of a profound free dream. I have put my black gold, my 24-karat gold, my nuclear energy, my emeralds, my cotton, my coca gold, and the poppy's dream. I have put my land and my working people at your disposal. Now I put my eye for your eye, my tooth for your tooth. I lay down my life. All you've wanted I had been giving you in exchange for a promise, an equitable destiny, legal and free from pollution, una situación de gano y ganas. You win if I win. You know it well, my adorable conqueror, that nobody loses with fair take you, more than trade. And besides, with all your power in this game of death, at the end, no one takes a single toy to the grave.
Wow. Bravo.
Tekyo. Yeah, that's interesting. I was reading recently about trade amongst indigenous tribes and confederacies in North America, and there's something similar among that. You know, there were trade routes, but they were through alliances amongst various groups of people, and
Mhm.
it it was a
That's the tekio.
cooperative,
It's
yeah, it was
tekio.
a cooperative thing amongst these
Mhm.
groups, these alliances, and the entire community, like let's say like the entire all of the Wendat people, for example, they all produced whatever it was that they were trading that was part of their society, and then whoever they traded with, they were also involved in trading, and the political organization of many of these groups were very uh, they were based off of consensus. So you really had to convince other people to go along with your ideas, and the way that if
Mhm.
you disagreed, the way you would show that is you voted by picking up and moving someplace else, basically. So there was a lot more freedom to disagree,
Mhm.
and a lot more freedom to share ideas, and to use intellect to convince each other through non-coercive means. So I think that these are all aspects that are missing from our existing society. Yes, you can have markets, yes, you can have trade, but there, as you said, there is this human element that's missing from that, the centering of the
Yeah.
people who
The
were
human
involved,
capital. Yeah.
and the
Human
respect of the
capital.
people who are involved in that, and in the creation of those goods that are traded is missing. So yes, that was very nice, Antonietta. Thank you.
Yeah, anything that is created by the force of the person acting, and in that way, it makes sense. The person cooking a meal, or the person taking care of the elder, or the person taking care of children, or the nurse, the poet, my activity is essential in this kind of society, because it helps, it puts in perspective. The poet was taken out of the republic by Plato for a reason. We were to observe from afar, and we could have been objective if we were inside. So Plato took us out of the republic, um, and to observe and put the finger where it hurts, to point to power. Where is that missing humanity? So, or that um, that aspect, and the musician, the artist, the person that speaks about what's going on. So yeah, it is integrated into our society, uh, but there's not so much emphasis. There is more emphasis on things, as if things will know that we left, and this is um, is the other people and the societies that will be remembered by what your actions are. And we can do well. um, we think we can do whatever we want because we have more money and more power, but at the end, I can only think that is, if we don't work to help and create and cultivate, there's no, there's so, meaningless. It's like the activity is just, it goes into a void. And one must think that, because at the end of the day, you only have yourself to confront, um, with yourself, and I might, one might think that people don't have the consciousness to realize that, but I do say that everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to have a certain degree of comfort. And we already have such a quarter of suffering anyway by taking birth on this earth. Certain we have to die, we have to get sick, um, and how to help, everybody. You help yourself, but we help everybody. And I think that that's where we hope that our governments are the, you know, best, of these people that are going to make sure that those exchanges of the human capital are are um, just, and we can only dream that utopian, world, but I think it is possible. And that awakening that Carlos was talking about is that with this, not only the pandemic, but it's been a process in our whole society of this awakening, that has been happening, even before Occupy, because we arrived to Occupy then all these years in which we saw, for example, homelessness and, all kinds of things. And one common denominator in all of this is war. We have a culture of war. We thrive on war. And that must change. And we just hope for that it could change. Uh, and the last poem I wanted to share was that one is, titled "Song for the Worker Woman." It speaks of the situation of women, and, I can read it now.
Yes, yes, please.
Okay, it has, an epigraph in Spanish by Gabriel Celaya, who is a Spanish poet. It says, "La poesía es un arma cargada de futuro. Poetry is a weapon charged with future." Song for the worker woman. It is happening right now in my heart, in my mind, on a city street of any country. But I need to take that the revolution is not here because conformity is sitting its big potato ass on a couch of mislead me tales. And we, the outraged 99%, have to push all at once with all power from the ground up, but first need to dig that we are the base. Here I break the screen before the system implodes a replay in my face. Here I exercise the muscle of rights before they become flaccid. But first I need to digest this. I protest, yes, because the nipple finds its way to the needy mouth. But I watch what kind of lollipop I get to shut me up. Administer like Prozac, The revolution is bipolar, sold to people as genetically altered mad cow with scorpion genes, and beware, smells like mass destruction. The re-evolution is at home, teaching children another way, teaching that public woman means leader and not prostitute, as it is written in the dictionary of men. And while you grasp that, take this. Organized women of the world will close the legs, not to give war. More kids still attached to placentas as body bags. These are weapons charged with future, and take these words to heart. The revolution is a planet of hungry widows with no work, homeless women and children with a future against all common sense. And what is for breakfast and dinner is next war until the next war, until the next war of poor against poor, against poor, against poor, while the one predator, unkind, breaks a richer laugh.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. Very powerful. And we are thinking of those workers today as we, again, one more time, we are celebrating the International Day of Workers. We think of the struggles that the workers face everywhere. And I say everywhere because it's a constant struggle. As prices, as the cost of living continues to rise up, we see wages being frozen. They haven't moved, they don't move. And with that comes the struggle just to survive, just to have the essentials, just to be able to get to the next contract. The unions work very hard to get, to receive for the workers. So we think about those things today as we put focus on workers and the labor movement and the unions and the shop stewards that are out there trying to put together, uh, you know, a fight for the injustice on the work floors, on on the different areas that people have to go to work in. You know, there's again, you brought up those people that are working on the farms, on the fields. You know, they have to endure all kinds of weather conditions, extreme heat, extreme cold, rain, snow. They are there picking those vegetables. They are there picking those fruits that all of us enjoy. And sometimes, again, at low wages or under very stressful conditions. So we think about those workers. We think about the bus drivers that have to deal with all kinds of abuse by the public. You know, I ridden the buses, the public transportation through the years, and sometimes I stand in awe just to see the kind of abuse that some of the workers have to endure driving a bus, people yelling at them, people becoming very violent. You know, we think of those people that have to clean hotel rooms, the kind of abuse that they have to endure by rude customers or men trying to take advantage of women in hotel rooms because they think that they are just pieces of whatever to them. They don't consider that these are moms, these are somebody's wife, somebody's daughter that are working out there. They have no respect for them, for people that work on restaurants, people that wash dishes, people that, fix shoes, people that work fixing, your computer, So you think about everything that has to do with your life, and you're gonna find somebody behind it working real hard under all kinds of conditions. Margaret? Can't hear you, Margaret.
Sorry, I couldn't. I accidentally moved the tab out and then I couldn't find it, so that's why I was like, I'm trying to click on it and I can click. Anyway, yes, yes. Today, the workers' movement has really struggled, I think, in the U.S. the since the 1950s onward, and in particular during the late 70s going into the 1980s with the rise of neoliberalism, Margaret Thatcher, Thatcherism, Reaganism, this backlash of conservatism, all these isms, right? And the destruction of the labor movement, I think, was really a reaction, was extremely reactionary against the successes of the labor movement going from the early 20th century and then under FDR, that the power of the labor movement then was so strong that it really changed the dynamics, and it forced through reforms that really minimize the impact and the control that the very wealthy had in the United States. And so there were moments, political moments and political failures and economic failures that happened in the 1970s that gave way for this reaction from the Conservative Party, from the Republicans, and the rise of neoliberalism that led to the absolute destruction of labor, because they knew that if labor remained strong, that they would not be able to undo the policies that were put forth that put them, in a kind of in a box, in a constrained box, a constrained form of capitalism. And since that time, labor has really struggled. So to the point that the union representation is very, very low. It's like, what, under 10% of all workers are in a union in this country. Some states had outlawed unions, the right to strike. There is so much that the movement has to do, that has to undo, in order to regain the successes, to see those major wins that labor had in the early part of the 20th century. And that is going to take time. We're starting to see that happen now, where people are getting interested in unions again and starting to create unions in places where they were unheard of, like Starbucks, Apple, what's the other internet company? It's a crowdsourcing company. They have one, Amazon. And I think it's really interesting that we're seeing this happen across the tech industry as well, because we have software engineers who are forming unions alongside coffee baristas, right? So I think that the what we define as labor now is changing. It's not just somebody who works in a factory, right? It's also somebody who is coding, websites. The person who's programming your Gmail or Twitter or whatever, right? Like, labor is much broader now. And then I think, Carlos and Antonietta, that we're missing another important element of the labor movement, not just the farm workers, not just the immigrants, and not just the people in the grocery stores, and not just thinking from the city workers, but also we need to think about the rural workers too, who have been incredibly disenfranchised and forgotten. And the only person in the Democratic Party who understood this was Bernie Sanders, and when he presented a very strong class analysis. And so I think we have a lot of work to do to unite and to expand our struggle to not just be something that is associated with the coast, with the West Coast and the East Coast and the blue versus the red. We have to find a way to move beyond political ideologies that are decisive, And we have to bring all workers together into this struggle. And I think this is one of the crises that we are facing right now, is how do we do that? How do we expand and how do we reach them? And that is going to be one of the key tests of the success of the labor movement going forward through this decade. Can we bridge that divide? And that is something that I am really hoping that we will see, because if labor can bridge that divide, and I guess I should be in the middle here. If labor can bridge that divide, then I think that labor would really have a chance to see the successes that it needs to see. But it involves also understanding that we have a just transition failure right now, and that we're moving away from fossil fuels to other sources of energy, right? And in that process, there are people who, at no fault of their own, are losing their jobs. People who work in the coal industry, for example, people who are in towns where tax revenue came from these coal plants or these fossil fuel plants. And those plants are starting to go out of business. And what happens to their town? What happens to those people? Where is the just transition for them? If we don't guarantee a just transition for those workers, especially, then I think we're going to fail to unite the working class across all bounds in this country, because they're going to feel especially hurt by this narrative that we have to move away from fossil fuels, that climate change is an existential threat, right? They're going to not trust in that message if they are the ones who are harmed the most by this transition. So it's my hope that as we go through over the rest of this decade, and every May Day that comes, that we remember that even if we don't always agree with each other on certain aspects of politics, that we are still one class of people, one class of workers, and we have to find a common ground in order to win. So that's my thought
Yeah,
on
there
this.
is there is one
Maybe.
there is one thing, Margot, in
Mhm.
relationship to what you're saying, that the some of those sectors is where the health conditions are most difficult, because these jobs are like, imagine the miners, going, having to dig deeper and deeper and deeper, and the oil workers and all of that, it's a real hard work. And the first line of um, problem there is the health of these workers. So I think that that transition is also going to be dictated, in a sense, by the incredible loss of health that these people, of course, you will think, do you know, that they have the best health care and access, and it's not the case in many of the situations. But I think that what we're talking here is such a great um, change that needs to take place, that the life existence and everything of these workers is at stake as the same as everybody else. So it's the earth that is dictating. And what I hear the scientific community is saying is that we wait a little longer, and there is no return point. It's going to be, forget about your situation trying to get work. There's not going to be life conditions in the planet. And if we get to that point, uh, and that we are going to be forced to understand, and we're going to have to yield to that change, because in the yielding and the navigating of the workers of those conditions is their survival, and the survival of their families and their entire communities and entire uh, cities and entire countries. So uh, is that tipping point? Are we going as a society to wait for that? You know, what we must curb is capitalist usury, and we need to overthrow capitalism as the one dictating the destiny of millions and millions of people. Capitalism must have very strong controls, because, like freedom, it is not unlimited, that you can just go and limit and do whatever you want. No, that that has in itself a responsibility that is even greater, to not let it go wild and be, just go and be a neo-capitalist everywhere and then kill everything in your wake just for a buck. No, no. And I think that these industries, if they don't get the message, we need the controls enough to hit them when it hurts, and that's the pocket. That's the language they speak. So let's hit them with let's don't let them thrive as they've been doing now. And we're going to have to be forced to do that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Antonetta, and for your poems. Margaret, I think we are just about the hour. We're going to be wrapping up this broadcast. But my thoughts for today on this May Day, as we honor and celebrate workers everywhere, is that the struggle continues. We got to continue to fight for our rights, for our dignity, for justice, for protection at the workplaces. We need to fight for our families, for their well-being, making sure that when we go and fight for new contracts, as the unions fight for contracts, that we support them, because they're fighting for our benefits. They're fighting for making sure that we have a safety net of protection. This is what the unions do. And this is why it's very important for us to come together, to work together. If we are going to succeed, in these next few years, is because of the unity of the people. It's because we coming together and work, understanding that Elon Musk, that the Bezos, that all these ultra-rich people have the workers, at the bottom of the stack. They are not concerned for us. And we saw that through the pandemic, where, there were, in many cases, almost like forced to recognize how essential the workers were. And they put them under really tough conditions, because we had a lot of people working out there, without protection. We saw that with the nurses. You would think the hospitals would take care of their own. And we saw many dying unnecessarily because they didn't have the protections that they should have as first responders. So there's a lot of work to do. But again, if we are going to succeed, it's through the unity of the people coming together. Together we are strong. This is what labor movement is all about. It's coming together, supporting the union, supporting each other, and knowing and understanding that your boss, I don't care how much you kiss to him, you're just a number for them. You're just a number for them. So it's better for us to form alliances with the workers, you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, is when we come together, that's when we are stronger and we are going to survive like that. So our broadcast today is dedicated to all the workers around the world, everywhere. Wherever you may work, in an office, outside, whatever your job is, including at your own home. You know, if you're a parent and you take care of your children, that's work. We honor you today. We honor you. This is your day. Margaret?
Thank you, Carlos, and thank you to all our viewers. Thank you to our special guest today, Antonieta Villamil, our poet in residence, for coming on and sharing some very, very wonderful and touching poetry on this May Day, this May 1st, this Day of the Worker. And thank you, as always. We're here every Sunday evening, 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. We simulcast on YouTube and Facebook. So please share us, follow us, hit that like button, subscribe, and let all your friends know that we're here every Sunday evening. You've been watching Stand Up Fight Back, where we discuss strategy and analysis for the progressive movement. I've been your co-host this evening. I'm Margot Pies, and that's Carlos Marroquin, your other co-host on the show. And as always, please stay safe and have a really great week, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you,
Uh,
Margot and Carlos, for your work. Thank you.
Thank you,
And viva the
Antonieta.
workers.
Fellow workers. Thank you. Bye, everyone.